Well, that was fun. Today was day 3 of my goal to ride my winter with a Vo2Master Gas Exchange Analyzer. I'm doing these on rollers, and the system that I'm using to record this is the Perf Pro Studio system, Perf Pro Studio 21. I'm following the Exert Adaptive Training Advisor using a different video clip series, but the goal here is to mix the theory of the physics with the fact of the physiology. And I'm honestly really excited with what I'm seeing. Today, while performing some anaerobic intervals to work on my exert focus, again, that's another term that discusses the relative intensity of a ride and all the benefits that you get in a certain time period based on the energy put into that ride. I actually blew a 68, and I am 68 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And I am really, really excited about that because when I was in my early 20s, I performed several running VO2 max tests, and I blew a 72 or a 76. I honestly can't remember. But to have this 30 years later roll into a 66 and a 68 and a 62 and a 65, which is what I've seen sometimes over the past 12 months, really, really gives me hope and joy that I can, really push myself to physiological elite status. I'm not racing. I really don't care about competition that much anymore. This is all about myself and educating the general population. So anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to download this clip. I'm going to abbreviate it. I will also run out and send some stills explaining the workout. And don't forget to ask any questions that you might have. So anyway, this is Richard Orton with Online Bike Coach, and enjoy the ride.
Okay, so here we are with the Perf Pro Studio up and running. I am in the upper right-hand corner. You can see I'm riding my rollers. And the main dashboard is showing my current VO2 max as I begin the first interval. Respiratory frequency immediately goes up to 41 or 42 breaths per minute. And the VO2 max starts to climb. Ventilatory expulsion in liters per minute starts going out to 109, 111. And you can see the heart rate is rising down in the lower left-hand corner. All of these are being charted. Now, the bright aquamarine line is the SMO2. And I like that metric because it's something I can take with me when I'm out on the road. You can see that I'm blowing a 48. And if you look at the purple line is the exponentially weighted moving average. It's like a rolling 25-second average with some x's to the y in wattage, and it's basically your metabolic power as you run into the penalty phase of an interval. And so you can see I've reached a 57 or a 58, and I immediately start to back off. Now, heart rate is going to, of course, be delayed, but SMO2 immediately starts to rebound, and the exponentially weighted moving average starts to recover as well. Now, we're going to go with this one a little bit longer because I want you to look at the big yellow number. My respiratory frequency is still high, and my VO2 max is still up there. If you look at the number beside it and below it, it's 83% right now, 82% right now, 81% right now, and that's based on a previous max of about 66. And so as the number comes down, you can see heart rate beginning to drop. You can see all the metrics are coming down, and I'm getting back into an aerobic state. But the metabolic penalty lasts a lot longer than you might think. And so that's one of the things I really want to work on is improving my recovery. It's not just the interval itself and the fact that I can blow good numbers, but it also is the fact that I can and should be able to do these repeatedly over and over again. Now, I'm not there yet. I'm not going to begin those until the 31st of December. And in fact, this is an abbreviated workout, but this was over 60 minutes, and it was largely polarized, with most of my power occurring at around the 170 mark, but the intervals themselves took a little bit longer. I'm sorry, the intervals themselves changed the focus of my interval set to, I think my rolling average, my normalized average was 202, 208, something like that. I'll try to provide the perf profile as an attachment to this video. Anyway, I'm going to let this one roll out a little bit because I want you to watch the continual drop in heart rate, the continual drop in exponentially weighted moving average, the lowering of the VO2 back below 60%, and the drop in respiratory frequency. I want that respiratory frequency to get back lower faster and into the 32 to 35 range. And that's something that I am going to work on once I get my interval sessions begun. Heart rate is coming back down to a more manageable and aerobic zone. I believe my threshold is about a 172 to 174. And if we look at the FeO2, now that's a different metric. That's a fun little metric. That is the expired O2. And when we think about it, at altitude, I believe the expired O2 is, what is it? We inhale 20 to 21%, we exhale 18%. We use a little bit of it. But if that FeO2 goes down closer to 16 or even down into the 15s, every breath is more efficient. Kind of interesting. Okay, so here we are. I'm fast forwarding. We're now 25 minutes in, and here's the beginning of the second interval, and this is the one where I'm going to blow some really, really good numbers. Go ahead and watch as the respiratory frequency begins to rise, ventilatory expulsion, which is the VE value, begins to rise. Now, my tidal volume doesn't change that much, and that's something that I've talked to some of the other coaches about. I probably need to be doing some diaphragm exercises to get that number to pop up into the 4.5 to 5 plus liter range. We'll see what happens. Okay, so here's a 43, there's a 44. There's a 47. Notice I'm not really paying that much attention to power as we go. Power is on that blue arc, but it's being shown as a percentage of 280 watts, which is a one-time threshold. I think it's closer to 265 right now. Now look at my heart rate. It's at 182. There's a 183. When I was a runner, I knew I had a threshold at 184 or 185. So here I am again on the bike, on rollers, busting it. There's a 65. There's 58 breaths per minute. I'm almost doing a breath per second. There's a 66. There's a 67. And there's a 68 point. I saw a 68.1, but it averaged out to a 68.0. Wow, I'm really, really happy with that. Now take a look at the graph itself. Do you see how the watts are rising? That, in my opinion, is the way that I like to do intervals because I believe in the bank it and then spend it theory. So if we bank those watts and kilojoules and then spend them as time goes on, we can get a higher average power from the overall average interval duration and intensity. Furthermore, look at the dip that's occurred in the SMO2, which is that aquamarine line, and look at the, if we zoom in a little bit, okay, the green line, the dark green, pine green line, that is my W prime. Now that is based on some old information, but the theory rings true. And W prime is your measurement of anaerobic work capacity expressed in kilojoules. And as we rise above the white line, which is the theoretical threshold of 280 watts, then we begin to bite into and burn away our ability to do anaerobic repeat work. So as EWMA goes up, which is that dark purple line, W prime definitely starts to go down. As the interval ends and heart rate begins to recover and SMO2 begins to recover and respiratory frequency begins to come back down, etc., then W prime gently rises again. There have been some updates to the W prime mathematical model. As you know, I am a big fan of the Exert HIE model, And that is a similar, but what I would call a fourth generation metric that we cannot see on this screen at this time. I will add it in a future video, but that's kind of where we sit right now. All right. Okay, so here we go to the third interval. And I really basically did this just to affirm that my 68 was somewhat real, and I wanted to get within 1 or 2% of that number. So as you can see, I kind of start out a little bit on the hot side. Respiratory frequency jumps, and we start breathing hard and pushing the high watts. I'm now at 120% of 280 watts. The heart rate's rising, going into the stratosphere. FeO2, I'm excited about. It stays below 16, which means that I'm getting more out of every breath as much as I possibly can. Look at my ventilatory expulsion, 143 liters per second, liters per minute. That's huge. 154 liters per minute. That's big. 169, 172. I think my valve is valid up to maybe 184. So I'm like kind of on the edge. I may have to go ask them if they can build me an extra large. But then here we go. I got a 66 and I called it. Okay, so now it's coming back down. It's at a 61, coming back down to 59. Respiratory frequency begins to drop. SMO2 is starting to deflect and come back up again. And EWMA is dropped below threshold. Heart rate is slowly coming down. And you'll notice, again, I waited a good long while to do each one of these intervals. And so that leads to another question. Do we perform intervals based on time, as in 30 seconds on and 1 minute off, or do we perform intervals based on physiological values of recovery, like heart rate comes down to a certain value, respiratory frequency comes down to a certain value, VE comes down, ventilatory expulsion comes down to a certain value? I think those are all valid questions, and they are questions that I intend to practice and answer with these videos. And that's, again, this is an expensive tool, but I'm hoping that this training using this medium will give me the ability to perform to my body's genetic potential. That's really what this is all about. What else? What else? Let's see what's going on here. SMO2 comes back up, and then it begins to come back down again as I reach homeostasis. The EWMA is somewhat flat at this point. And after this, I basically just rode base below at about 175 watts, 180 watts, give or take, in order to finish up my training for the day and achieve my exert XSS score, exert stress score. That's really about it. Let's see what we can do with this. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. And again, as I said at the beginning of this video, thanks and enjoy the ride.